This week on the Mayday podcast, we're talking about becoming a pundit, that is me, and what it's like to be transitioning out of the game into the media. Some news regarding a couple players and their interactions with fans recently. Pedro Grifol gets fired in the south side of Chicago. So let's talk about the responsibilities of a manager on a bad team. And this celebrity talked about mic'd up players and why he doesn't like it. All this next. Stay tuned. Hey there, welcome back to the show. Long hiatus once again. I have been traveling a lot. I will get into that into a moment, but I just wanted to say it's great to see you guys. Make sure that you are subscribed so you don't miss any more of these episodes, and go check out all my other content that I've been working really hard on. That is my TikTok channel. I am Trevor Man on TikTok. Has all kinds of short form stuff that is pretty fun. Been doing breakdowns and things there. And go sub to the YouTube channel. I have a big goal of reaching 100,000 subscribers by the end of the year. I think I am at like just over 80,000. So we've made a lot of progress, and we are on pace, I think, but it's getting pretty close. So that would mean a lot to me. You get like a Google Play button, a little plaque that you get to put up on your wall. And I don't know. That just sounds like one of the cooler things that it would feel like a big accomplishment. So if you could help me out there, that'd be very helpful. And also check out my live show. That is Mayday Mondays. It's very similar to what we do here, but that is every Monday morning, with the exception of the Monday after this coming one. That will be a Tuesday. But most of the time, it will be Mondays moving forward. That is 8 a.m. Pacific time. And you can watch me on Twitch. I'm Trevor May on Twitch. Or on YouTube, Trevor May Baseball. It's broadcast to both channels. Whichever one works best for you is the best one that you should listen and watch at. I have a lot of fun doing it. You get to participate. I get to answer your questions. You guys throw out subjects, and we can go into them. We can research stuff. It's pretty fun. And I'm always looking for your input and the things you want to hear about, because that is why I do stuff like this. It's not for me, it's for you. So thank you so much for going and following those things beforehand so you don't forget. I would appreciate it. And if you want to participate in more of the baseball conversation, I also have a Discord channel. All of these things are going to be in the description below as well. So just go check. You can click on any of the links you need, and that should be easy. It's enough housekeeping. I want to get into our first subject. And our first subject is something that I thought would be interesting to touch on, because I am a player that was in the league, that is the major leagues, last year. And now I talk to a mic for a living. And I have always had this approach to these things of saying yes. This is something that, I learned when I was younger, that the way you get yourself out there, and if you want to build any sort of like brand in the content space, and this was before content is what it is. I'm talking about like mid 2010s. I'm talking about 2016, 17, 18, 19 was when I really, really focused on this stuff. I was streaming on Twitch all the time. I was full time on Twitch for a while when I had Tommy John surgery. So I learned to say yes, and now I'm learning to say no, because frankly, I have done stuff for long enough to where I can be a little bit more choosy. I feel like that might sound cocky, but I think this is important for me to say out loud, especially if people are going to hear it, because I'm trying to hone in on the things that I have the best affinity for and that I enjoy doing the most. And lucky you and me, this is one of those things. I like doing this. This is mine. I like having things that are mine, that come out of my between my ears. So I appreciate you being here. So anyway, the last 4 weeks, to continue on what I wanted to say, I have been flying every Saturday in the middle of the day to New York City, and then I stay the night, and then I do Sunday Night Baseball, and then I fly back Monday morning. Shout out to JFK Airport and Terminal 7. Why did I say tropical? Where did that even come from? Terminal 7, we've been spending a lot of time together on those Monday mornings, so I always appreciate our hangs, but it's going to be nice to not actually have to do that this weekend. So it'll be 5 out of 6 straight weekends of flying to New York City, so needless to say, I'm tired. That's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot more. I thought that I could handle it more because of the nature of baseball and how I have to fly around all the time, but those are chartered flights. Those were walk on, walk off. Those weren't TSA. Those weren't delayed. There's a lot of other stuff. So I did have to red eye one night. That stunk. That was the first one. I red-eyed there because we had our baby shower that Saturday, so I could not leave as early as I would have needed to in order to get there at a reasonable time. So I just flew overnight, which was maybe the dumbest thing I've ever done. But then I took a nap and I got through it, and it was fine. And every other time since then, with the exception of one, I've had a delay one way, but it's been pretty smooth sailing. But it is exhausting, and it is super duper interesting, everything that goes along with it and how much different it is doing a live TV show, because I've been doing the ESPN2 StatCast broadcast with Mike Petriello and Kevin Brown leading the play-by-play. It's been a blast. We're all super nerds. I really enjoy working with those guys. We're having a good time. We've become pretty good friends, and we just bounce off stats off each other all the time. It's like show and tell every day. So I'm really having a good time, but I am realizing how hard it is to deep dive subjects, especially complex subjects, without oversimplifying them on TV. Because there's only so much time, and now there's a pitch clock too. So we're not needing to fill as much air, and things are going quickly, especially if the pitchers are good, which they have generally been pretty good in the games we've covered. It's an interesting new type of challenge that I have not had to deal with before, but it is there, and it is interesting. I'm realizing that I would love if it always comes out to commercials, right? And I understand that commercials are part of the way this thing works. But if I had my way, I would just host one of these games on Twitch. We would watch it the whole time. When it went to commercial break, I'd just leave those commercials up, leave them playing with audio, like just promote the things they want me to promote, but also have me be there, be able to give context on the things that I saw in the last inning, so that it's a little bit more of a watch party situation. And I feel like that is something moving forward that would do really, really well, and will be a I think, sustainable formatting. Unfortunately, though, how do you make more money that way? And that is what ESPN and that's not just ESPN. That's just what TV is. It's a problem they've been trying to solve, and they're still actively trying to solve moving forward. So it's so interesting because it's so fun, but there are such limitations sometimes, and it's a whole new skill, and I'm just learning how to do it. But I am having a great time, and I hope that you guys are enjoying those shows as well. Overall, not just Sunday Night Baseball, I am coming to the conclusion that this right here, this type thing, getting on here in the Bill Simmons type style, and just kind of riffing on what's going on and kind of deep diving and kind of just following trains of thought into certain types of subjects is something that I think is one of my defaults. It's something that I'm always going to come back to. I'm always going to like doing. And I think it's going to be something that I would like to maybe put a little bit more effort and a little more consistency into, to touch on the things that you guys think are interesting. And I always want to know what you think is interesting. So once again, the best place to reach me is going to be our Discord channel. That's discord.gg/Trevor May. And if you can't hear what I'm saying, because sometimes I say that so fast and I just did it again, just check down in the show notes. So I like podcasts. I like doing this. I like doing Rates and Barrels. I think that we have more freedom to get into the nuts and bolts a little bit more, and that's the type of thing I want to do. And frankly, in terms of like catching up on the news, what's going on around the game, all that kind of stuff, like this guy did this thing and this guy hit 3 homers and whatever. Like those are all great, I think, things to get out there. And news, breaking down the local news or like the recent news in the game is all viable. But I don't think it's something that I'm super passionate about. I like staying up on it, like having conversations about it. But I like to get more into the nitty gritty of the implications of what some of the stuff might mean, right? So I personally I catch up with Foul Territory. The guys over there do a great job. And shout out to Mark and Scotty and AJ and Kratzy and all the other players for being so consistent. And Gabby, you guys are doing such a great job. Everyone behind the scenes just making sure that they have a nice pipeline of content coming out all the time. So like I can catch up on the news around the world of baseball and them, and then Baseball Today with my man Plouffe and Chrissy Rose. Like I'm Wake and Jake also is in there. Like some of this John Boy stuff, the guys who are there and doing daily shows, I think that niche has been filled up pretty well, and I'm enjoying listening to their stuff. And I don't feel the need to parrot what they're saying, but I do like the deeper content. I think that was pretty clear, maybe to fans, maybe more than me moving forward. But now that I've done a lot of other things, I just want you to know that I'm going to focus harder on this stuff, and I know it's not necessarily talking about baseball yet, but I just wanted to, I don't know, sharing this stuff is also part of what's interesting about being a player in the game, because guys transition out and you have to find a way to transition out. And there's been a lot of differences between me as a baseball player and me as a content creator / media person, but it was pretty seamless because I've been doing this for so long before. So it hasn't been as jarring for me as it has for, I can imagine, other people. But that said, I'm having a blast, and I do not regret my decision one bit. I got to play wiffle ball a little bit too, get some of that competitive fire out of me. So, though I don't like being fat, but that's a whole nother thing we can talk about another day. I'm terrified I'm going to be one of those people that I'm going to run a half marathon or something, because I just need to like have some sort of athletic goal to move me forward. Everyone says it when you retire, you're like, why would I work out? What's the point? And I was like, nah, it's not going to be me. Yeah, it was. It's me. It's me. It's everybody. We all do that. You don't realize normal has been like really hard work for a long time, and then you have the ability to rest. You're going to tend to choose things that are a little bit less effort, maybe, especially, since I got a little one coming along too here in the next 6 weeks or so. My first one. It's going to be quite the ride, but it's going to be one of those rides that's so fulfilling that it's all worth it. I can't wait. All right, let's get into a little bit of news. There's 2 pieces of information. Actually, there's 3 pieces of information or little stories that I'd like to touch on, all regarding players and something that's happened with them. And I think there's a little bit of a side commentary to make on all 3 of these things. I don't know if you noticed the theme here on the show, but we work in threes. We have 3 big subjects, and sometimes those subjects are broken into 3 small subjects. So this first one is the 3. First things first, Camilo Doval, I won't say long time, but the last couple of years, he's been kind of the unanimous closer for the San Francisco Giants. He was demoted. And that's a head scratcher to so many people, considering they have gotten hot recently and they are making a push for the playoffs. I believe they're over 500. Blake Snell has been otherworldly since the break, and just before the break, and they got Robbie Ray throwing well as well, and then they already got Webb. So like that's a 1-2-3 punch that I would take in any playoff series against any team, especially because there's 2 lefties in there. It's just really interesting. It's almost to the point where we hope to make the playoffs so that we can watch that. Unfortunately, there's 2 more teams in their division that are taking off as well. Even faster, that I don't know if all three teams would have to be probably from the NL West, and I don't see that happening. So you can always hope, but I doubt it'll happen. Anyways, Camilo Doval sent down. He's got a 4.70 ERA, and people are like, what is wrong with Camilo Doval? And what is wrong with Camilo Doval is he just has poor command this year, and he's just throwing the ball over the middle of the plate in poor situations. Everything else, exactly the same. Every peripheral number, everything that is projecting him to be really effective. His strikeout total's still really high. He still has 20 saves. Like, he's done a lot of good things. It just hasn't been consistent. And when guys get sent down, they're trying to find consistency and possibly take their foot off the gas, right? You want them to feel a little bit less pressure, so you send them somewhere where the stakes aren't quite as high, so they can work on just throwing the ball over the plate and having confidence in it, bringing them back up and resetting. That's what it is. He's not going to be down for very long, but a lot of people were panicking. A lot of Giants fans were on the internet just like, what is going on? What is wrong with him? He's cooked. It's quite the downfall, blah, blah, blah. But this isn't one of those downfalls. He wasn't like ineffective. He was just inconsistent. So Camilo Doval gets sent down. I wouldn't worry too much about it, but it was kind of big news, and by all accounts, he has received the information or the news fairly well, and is going to go do the work he needs to go. Another interesting tidbit on Camilo Doval: he is listed as throwing a cutter, and I just want everyone to know, as his fastball, like he throws a cutter and a sinker. He throws a bad four-seam fastball. It is not a cutter. It doesn't cut at all. It's one of those pitches that I think, just because of the nature of how it spins, he maybe would like it to be called a cutter, but for all intents and purposes, if you're out there and you're making decisions in fantasy or otherwise, based on his function of his cutter and how his cutter is being reacted to, it's not a cutter. Treat it like a four-seam fastball. It has 6.8 inches of horizontal run, which if it's a cutter, it's going the opposite. It's going the wrong way, and it's not a cutter. So I just to point that out there. I know I'm very, very like, no, it's this about this, but there's something about it that just bothers me. It throws my brain off a little bit to consider a pitch that isn't the pitch that people think it is. So just another interesting thing. Other two stories. Jaron Duran is currently right now serving a two-game suspension for yelling a homophobic slur at a fan who was heckling him after his second strikeout of the game the other day. There was a lot of conversation around what was said to him, and if that is, bad enough to say the things he said. At the end of the day, he used the F slur. So if you're wondering what it was, I'm not going to say it, obviously, but that's what he said. It's a very Xbox lobby type of word. It's a very 2003 middle school kid, like trying to, do the execution move on somebody. And it's just, there's no place for it, especially when you're an adult in public with kids around. And it's just not a word we use or should use. And regardless of how other people use it or how the people it affects feel about it, just maybe we just retire that one and move on. It's better safe than sorry situation. He did apologize. He did stand in front of his locker and take it. And I hope that this is one of those catalysts that kind of just he's like, you know what? I think it's time to really give this thing the attention and the brain power I need to really cut this thing off at the stem now and just let it be. It's gone. I said it happened. It was horrible, and I shouldn't do that, and I'm going to move on with my life. I don't think we need to cancel him. I don't think, I think that people say horrible stuff about people all the time, and certain people have worse stuff said about them than other people. But disparaging anybody for any reason is just easily avoided, and it doesn't make any sense to me. So, yeah, just let's move on from that. But anyone who says it's a free speech issue or whatever, I just want you to know, or at least on the internet, because this is going to be on the internet. So I guess this is a space we're talking in. Anyone who likes to bring that up or says guys can say whatever they want or people are too soft or whatever, you just save it. Just save it. We know that that argument is not in good faith. I'm no longer willing to explain what free speech is because it's not a hard concept to know about, and it's not lack of understanding. It's just not listening. So, I'm just going to assume that someone who makes that argument has alternative motives. That's it. Wow. Let's just sit with that for a second. All right, alternative motives did it, and we'll just tell them to stop it and just not give them the light of day, which I just did for 5 minutes. So. Don't do as I say, not as I do. Thank you. Anyway, moving hither. Our third player with an interaction with fans, Austin Adams, gets big outs in the fifth inning against for the Oakland A's against the New York Mets, a team that he was with in March of this year, and subsequently got DFA'd for the roster crunch there as they decided who was going with them up north. And he very clearly didn't take very kindly to that. So as he walked off the mound, he got a big strikeout, walked off the mound, mocked the "oh my God" celebration they do when they hit home runs, and is seen yelling some stuff. I think it was JD Martinez hitting. No, it was Francisco Alvarez hitting, which I don't think he has any issue with Francisco Alvarez, but he yelled out a POS, which I think is just a general term, like I'm better than you kind of thing. That was a pump him up. And then he goes, DFA me. You guys are or whatever. Like it was basically a big chip on the shoulder thing. And he let them know how he felt. Now, it's an interesting situation. For one, for some reason, this is always happening to the Mets. I do not know how this consistently happens to the New York Mets, but and that outside parties just don't like them, and it's interesting because I think that they're I think that a lot of the media around it, a lot of the controversy, a lot of players like think that that's real. I got that question a lot. Like, oh, is it like really the craziest place ever? Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, like it is, but it isn't. A lot of that stuff's just a lot of that stuff's blown out of proportion, and half of it's just manufactured. Like it's not even a real thing. Is there more than other places? Yeah, sure. There's more than in like Minnesota. Minnesota's the most laid back place on the planet. It's New York City. There's still a lot going on, but most of that stuff's overblown. And but it's so funny that like the vitriol for I think guys that feel slighted by that team seem to happen a little bit more often. That said, he can do whatever he wants. Like I think it's great. Like if you get energy from something and you say something, and as long as you're not jamming your finger in someone's face and yelling in their face and blaming someone specifically and making it personal, which he didn't. I don't have any issue with it. You got to step up. But I also love that Sugar Diaz took exception and is using this as a little bit as a fire me up situation. And just like it's his prerogative to his, meaning Austin Adams, for saying the things that he said and did the things that he did, it's also Edwin Diaz's prerogative to respond. And they're both right. I think they're both right. I think this makes the game fun to watch. As someone who is more or less adverse to conflict, it would make me uncomfortable to act either way. But I was also soft. So like that was something that I just was not good at. And I got anxiety from it, and I had to deal with it in other ways. And it wouldn't be something I did, but that doesn't mean it's right or wrong. It just means it's not my personality. So I think it's good for the game. I think the fans will fire it up. I think the Mets fans are fired up now, and they have a villain to point their ire at, and they like that. And it's sports, man. It's sports. Confrontation is literally the name of the game at times. So he lets him know, it was kind of the fifth inning, but that's just semantics at this point. So love it. Keep it going. Just make sure no one gets hurt, or don't do anything stupid, guys. Just go out and play a little bit harder, and maybe we'll see even more competitive games over the next couple days. Now, for our next topic of discussion, Pedro Grifol, the ex-manager up until recently of the Chicago White Sox. Yes, those Chicago White Sox, those 29-93 Chicago White Sox. They lost 21 straight games. They finally win a game. Pedro Grifol gets fired. And there's a lot of questions flying around about this situation. One, why did it take so long? Right? Why did we wait so long? The most common theory, I think, the most popular theory around the world, around the media circuit, is that it's entirely possible that they were waiting for him to win. Which, you know what? Good on the White Sox if that was part of it. Like, let's get a win here so he doesn't have to like go home like knowing that he hadn't won in 3 weeks, and then we'll make a decision. And then it took, they almost didn't win for a month. Like that's I can't wrap my head around that. Like going in every day and be like, we're gonna lose today. I don't know. Remember what winning's like. That is, I've been on some tough teams. I was on one last year. Like we know, but like we had to find a way out, and I think the most we ever lost was like 11 or 12. So, which is a lot. And they lost almost 10 more games than that, which is nuts. So I can't imagine what it's like to be in that clubhouse. It's a level that I can't even fathom. But being Pedro, knowing you're responsible for it, must be even harder. So he did say one thing that I will then expand on. I think that shows where his head's at, and also explains why inevitably he was the guy. They realized that he wasn't going to be their guy moving forward. And they said, "Hey, Pedro, how aware are you of the streak?" And he goes, "Oh, we count the game every day." And I'm like, "Well, first of all, counting every time you lose, not the best way to do it. Even if you are doing that, don't tell that to the public, because they're going to run with that, right? It's just that's a rookie mistake." And hearing that, I was like, that just shows your bosses that you are caught up like players are caught up in this whole "we're so bad" thing. And when you are the manager of a bad team, you have to find a way to not get caught up with the reality, the results of things that are happening, because you need to get better. And here's why you could do it. And then here's what I think you need to do when you are a first-time manager going into a situation where your team is not going to be good. And let's be very clear, the White Sox were not going to be good this year. They weren't. Just like the A's, they weren't going to be good last year. We were not. They signed me. We weren't going to be good. I knew that going in. And so it became, how do we get better, and how can I help younger guys be a better version of themselves when they're done playing than when they started the year? Like that was my goal. Like, now I was a player. I wasn't a manager, but I was a player. And I think that Mark Kotze maybe didn't start quite in that space, but then towards the end, he was very much in that space and was very honest with the guys and was very open and honest about like what he was looking for specifically. And it was unclear at times, and then it became clear as the time went on, and he got an opportunity to go back this year, and very clearly they are a better team than they were last year, and they are improving. And they can say that. They can say, look at these guys and look at the incremental improvement they made. Pedro Grifol did not do that. Not only did he not do that, it seemed like they were going the opposite way. Like the young play, no one was focused on getting better. They were focused on just getting through that day. And you have to divorce process from results when you're in that situation. You have to. Like, there is no, oh, this is the big leagues, you're supposed to win the big leagues. False. That is not how it works anymore. And if we keep acting like it works like that, it's just so frustrating to hear that constantly. The playoffs are 12 teams now. Almost half the teams in the league make the playoffs. The competitiveness of a team to go out and get all the best players to win their division that year, that's not a thing. That's not going to be a thing because you don't need to win your division anymore. So to say that everyone on your team's 22, every young team, everyone calls their guys up, they're their first rounders within a year of being drafted. They don't get any opportunity to really learn how to fail, and they do it in the big leagues. And you have to be open to that. The fact that we are still developing you guys as players. This is not going to be a plug and play situation like it was in 2004. This is you're developing at the big leagues, and the coaching staff cannot treat it that way. To where you guys are in the big leagues, you are professionals. They're not yet. They are not yet. And they need to learn it there. And that is something that's changed. I think that the league is really struggling to adjust to, is the type of, I don't want to call it coddling, but the type of focus on development you have to do in the major leagues these days, because the age of the league is going down and down and down. And that is a good thing, but also the development needs to be in pace with that. And I feel like there's certain organizations that aren't doing it. And they obviously didn't see Pedro focusing on that. And, but that's also not his fault if that wasn't made clear by his front office. Like, I think that front office of teams and owners of teams, sometimes they go out and they don't do much and they still have their fingers crossed. Like, maybe this will work out. Maybe we'll get some diamonds in the rough. Maybe some of the young guys we bring up will just become superstars and we'll look good at the end of the day. Everyone still has that hope going into the season. Even if you're projected to be terrible, there's still a chance that you do something crazy. You find someone, or something comes along, or something clicks when they're with you. And that is very much how baseball works a lot. And that just wasn't going to happen. So from what I'm hearing, what I saw, especially like the young group of guys, it doesn't feel like they're bought in to that organization. And you got to find a way to get guys to buy into, like, this is how you're going to get better. And regardless of how many games we win, yes, the goal is to win games. But right now we're so far from winning consistently that we have to be able to like get better, so that as we get better, we're getting closer to be able to win games consistently. The process is not different from the results. It's just the step before it. And sometimes the step before it isn't very good, and it's not going to allow you to get to the result you want. And so you have to focus on that process only, because the result doesn't really matter in the long run. No matter how bad it looks, it still does not matter. And we got to make it normalized and say it's okay to be like, hey, you don't have to be public with it, but you can say it to your players. Guys, winning, like us going out and winning 100 games, is not going to happen. We're probably not going to make the playoffs. We could, but our goal is to get better and to do the things the right way, and to make sure that we are putting ourselves in position to win games and let our talent take over. And over time, if you do that for long enough, you will close the gap. It just is the way that it works. I want to reference A's again. They are closing that gap. You can tell. J.J. Bleday, Brent Rooker, Shea Langoliers, Lawrence Butler. These guys are all way better than they were last year. So and they're just focusing on getting better. We've had these conversations over and over and over again over there, and it doesn't seem like Pedro was the guy. So they went and got Grady Sizemore and said, "Grady, this is your job. Now you got it." Now they did say, it's like, "Hey, we're gonna he's the interim and we're not gonna hire him moving forward." But I think they're hoping that he can add a little bit of youth and a little bit of that idea, like, "Hey guys, we're on a bad team. I've been there 7 weeks. Let's all get better. I'm 42. I'm one of the boys. Let's hang out." Right? I think that's what they're going for. I don't know. I honestly don't know what his chops are to be a manager, or if that's a job he's even well positioned to be. But if he does continually, like, I wouldn't say if he wins a bunch of games like that, it shouldn't be based on that. It should be based on how much better his young group of guys is from now until the end of the season and improving, regardless of how many games they win. Obviously, they're all trying to avoid being the worst team in the history. But guess what, guys? Someone's got to be the worst team in history. We got to stop worrying about all this stuff, being associated with that stuff. No one's going to remember who was on the team when that happened. If it does happen, just focus on getting better, and it'll take care of itself. This is the hardest thing to do on the planet, especially when the team is that bad, but you have to. It's the only way forward. It's the only way these guys will be able to build fruitful big league careers where they can add and contribute to a winning team in the future. So that's Pedro going. That's my 2 cents. I've thought a lot about this. I hope that was something you thought was interesting. And now for our final story of this one comes from the Discord, which I've mentioned twice already. And so again, go join it. And it was brought to me by a user on Discord, mentioned that he heard my name used in a recent podcast episode. That podcast is called The Book of Joe. It is Joe Madden's podcast that he does with Tom Verducci. And for their 100th episode, they had on Jerry Seinfeld, a massive New York Mets fan. Now, needless to say, when I saw this message, my interest was immediately piqued because, as a member of the New York Mets for 2 years, and knowing about their pretty extensive celebrity fandom, Jerry Seinfeld, Jimmy Kimmel, Coheed and Cambria, there's lots of people that come out and support the Mets from time to time. A lot of actors, right? People like that. And so it's really interesting to know someone who's really into, like, I'm really into the entertainment industry. I'm really into film. I'm really into comedy. I love Seinfeld. Everyone does. So, like, he's like New York royalty. Him knowing who you are even is not a lot of people can say that. So they said, well, Jerry said your name. I was like, okay, well, I gotta go see this. So I was going to play the clip from the pod, but I realized that I would just be stealing a pod's content. So go listen to that if you want. It's the 100th episode. It's the most recent one released by The Book of Joe. And this comes out at about the 8.5 minute mark if you want to listen to the words, but I'll give you a paraphrase. Basically, the concept of miking up a player comes up. Now, I have my own thoughts on this, but I'll get in those in a moment. But let me establish what Jerry thinks, using me as an example of all people. So basically, he says, so there's a thing about miking up, and I hate it. He goes, there used to be this reliever for the Mets. I can't remember his name, but he's kind of funny guy. So first things first, I need you to really internalize this. Jerry Seinfeld said, I'm kind of a funny guy, though he doesn't know my name. So you can take that for what it's worth. I'll give myself a little half pat on the back. And then he then says it again. Okay, so this guy, he's kind of funny. He's a pretty funny guy. And God, what is his name? Can't remember it again. So there's two calling me funny, but not remember my name. He goes, Trevor something. So he got my first name. So I'm like, hell yeah. There's not that many Trevors. I thought he would get it from there. Also, my last name is literally the name of a month. So I thought that would stick. Didn't, unfortunately. But shout out to Verducci. He's like, Trevor May. It's Trevor May. He goes, yeah, Trevor May. He did this a thing. He did it on the bullpen. He's a funny guy, and he was trying to be funny, and he did a good job. But he did it during the game, and he's referring to this time where I think we were playing the Braves, or like the Phillies, maybe. I don't really remember, but I was in the bullpen, and I remember talking through the fence. I had my fingers through the fence, like the chain link fence, and I was like, wow, it looks like I'm in prison. And I think one of the GKR said that, and it was pretty funny. It was a great interview. But then I went later in, and I pitched, and I gave up some runs. He said I got shelled. I don't think it was that bad, but yeah, I didn't pitch well. I wasn't sharp. And I don't remember specifically. I remember the outing, and I know that happened that day, but I don't remember specifically how it all went. And he made the point, about how hard it is to, once you're prepared, to then switch your brain to something else and then swap back. And that is very, very true. I used to do this in high school when I took tests, right? If I studied for this test and then took any breaks, so if I did study for test, took 2 days off and then tried to go take the test, it's not like I forget things. I just I wasn't able to follow trains of thought as well. So if I had all these complex concepts that I was thinking of them being connected in a certain way, I would lose the connections, not the content itself. I hope that makes sense. But that's just very much the way my brain works. I'm very like singularly focused, or I can't focus at all. ADD. Who would have thought? So I used to like not cram, but I used to like go an hour before the test started that day or whatever, or like an hour before school that day. And I would just like go to the library 45 minutes and give myself a half an hour where I just review my notes one more time. Right. Yeah, I procrastinated bad too. I'm not going to act like I didn't stay up all night studying for tests, but on good days where I was fairly prepared, I'd still go early and do it. And he says, when I prepare my shows, I go through my material, I get there, I get the cadence down, I do the practice, I warm up, and then I need to just go out. Like there's got to be nothing else that I need to shift my attention to before I go out on stage. And it's very much like that. Like you can see how the performance is going in real time, right? And very similar to baseball in that way. And I was like, that's base. That makes a lot of sense. So I fully agree with him, and I fully agree that maybe getting interviewed where I have to answer specific questions, or I'm trying to perform for a camera and then go perform on the field, I'm just making it harder on myself by the nature of the action, which I think he's right. Though I did love doing interviews, and I think in-game interviews are a great thing and need to continue, and I really would love to see them more often. I think they should be done by players that are not going to play, or if they do, it's going to be later and they'll have time to check in, maybe like a bench player or maybe a starting pitcher. Those guys should be mic'd up. Or if you're going to mic a player up in the game, it should be a one-way feed. So where, like the NFL, you get their recording and then you can, there's no one talking back to them. I think that's the issue. So we saw this recently with the Astros against the Mets on an Apple game, I believe. I think it was a Friday night game with Jeremy Pena having a conversation at shortstop, which is one of the more active positions. You got to communicate with your shortstop or with your second baseman all the time, who's covering the bag, who's got up the middle, who's got all this stuff, and you're doing all these things. And they're asking him all these questions, like, what do you think of Jose Altuve? Is he a Hall of Famer? Like, all this kind of stuff where he needed to think through long form answers. And at some point, there's a pop-up, and he goes quiet to third base. It kind of goes a little deeper, and they can't hear each other, and it just drops between them. Right? Really awkward for everybody, including the guys in his ear. They're like, do we talk? Do we say anything? So it was just silent on the broadcast. So not only was it a bad look, but also no one knew what to do. And so it hurt the broadcast from two different directions. And I agree with that. But I do like, at the end of the day, here's what sports and just entertainment is live entertainment is doing and trying to do and find ways to do. And I think that if we all think in what's the intent here, what are we trying to achieve, maybe we can find better ways to do things quicker, because instead of just trying stuff, reacting, complaining, whatever, and having them react, we just say, we like this, could you do this more? At the end of the day, for so long, TV has been a separate thing from the people at home. You sit in your chair and you feel a barrier between you and what's happening on the screen in front of you. What then happened was live streaming, right? So Twitch and Justin TV before that, and YouTube Live, and whatever it is, whatever you're using, Kick. There's all kinds of older ones, Streamable. All of these sites have allowed people to interact with the person on the camera in real time. And that was something that people that they love it, especially younger people, but all people love that something they do can affect what is happening on that screen. So what we want to do is we want to try to pull people forward here, make them feel like they're getting something from on that screen that is something they never had before, and then creates that visualize leaning in closer to the TV or feeling like when you say something, the person can hear you. You want to create that feeling, and that's why I do the things that I do in the way that I do them. That's why I have my Discord channel. That's why I do the live stream on Twitch and YouTube, because I love that there's a chat and that you guys can be like, hey, what do you think about this situation? And I can go learn about the situation and do the research and have the honest conversation in real time. I love that. So even for live baseball games, there are, things adjacent to this that we can do. And that doesn't mean like taking questions off Twitter specifically, but it could mean like hearing what someone is thinking or saying out in real time, out loud as something happens is such an interesting moment to capture and to fully understand that we were never able to understand before. If like a pitcher were pitching and he's a guy who speaks out loud a lot. I was one of those people. I would have a conversation, be like, all right, here's what remember, we're going to work out of this tunnel, or all right, all you have to do is hit the slider down away, and we're just going to challenge him here, and whatever happens, happens. Like I was constantly giving myself pep talks like that, and talking through what I wanted to do, and I think that would have been wildly entertaining or wildly interesting to a lot of people. And there are guys who are willing to do it because I don't think that doesn't hurt your ability. You're still doing the same things, just people can hear you that couldn't hear you before. So like that's one of my ideas. I think that's what people want. I mean, obviously, hop into the Discord and tell me if you disagree. But I believe that the more we can feel like we're bringing people into the game that don't want to play and they don't want to GM and they don't want to have to do anything. They just want to feel like they're part of the experience with everyone else that is enjoying it. I feel like we have the technology now to implement a lot more of that stuff and get creative with it and just make it not change it in any big way. It's just giving you a little bit more. I think you can get a little bit more without anyone having to put more effort into it. I think there's inefficiencies for what is shown, and hopefully we're leaning to that area. So anyway, this whole story was to talk a little bit about the display of the game, obviously, and what we think about mic'd up players, which I think is a awesome thing to have, but I also think there's a way to implement some of the stuff into broadcast, even from other voices, kind of like how we're doing the StatCast broadcast on ESPN. I think there's alternate broadcasts they could do for any games on all kinds of different platforms. It's just about monetization and making sure everyone is getting the piece of pie that they think they deserve, or that they do deserve, or that is, within the contract or whatever. And a lot of times that's where the hang up is. It's just like, how is everyone going to make money? And when one side doesn't make enough, they pull out. So hopefully this stuff continues to evolve, but I think Jerry was completely on top of that, and the way that we do it now is not the best way to do it. And also Jerry Seinfeld thinks I'm kind of a funny guy. That Trevor guy who pitched for the Mets recently, yeah, he's kind of funny. So that meant a lot to me. Jerry Seinfeld kind of knows who I am. I guarantee you if I were to DM him or talk to him at any given time in the near future, that he still probably wouldn't remember my full name. But you know what? I suck with names too, though I do know Jerry Seinfeld. It's cool that he even knows my first name. That was a really cool moment for me. And it's cool to know that someone who is so good at what they've done and that is a fan of something that you were a part of. I don't know if he's a fan of what I did. I don't think he's super. I'm just guessing here. But yeah, I think there's a lot of people out there that wish I would have been overall better in New York. But you know what? I wish I was better everywhere. So I don't blame. I'm not going to hold that against anybody. But yeah, Jerry Seinfeld knows me. How crazy is that? All right, that is our show for this episode. Like I said before, I'm going to try to do this again once a week, like literally once a week, touching on a couple subjects. And honestly, I'm also going to put this out there. There are days where I might just do 2 segments, and it's like a 25 to 30-minute episode. I just want to make sure that I'm getting them out because I love this stuff. And before I go, a couple other things that I forgot to bring up. One, I have some merchandise being built out that is going to be really fun. It is a series of like stickers and shirts and all kinds of stuff with the Just Punch Tickets kind of catchphrase that I've been running with. Just punch tickets. When in doubt, just go punch a ticket and get out of there, right? That's how pitchers are successful, and I will stand by that till the day I die. So yeah, we have those stickers coming out in the next couple weeks, and they're all themed and colored and for each team all around the league, so you can get one that fits your favorite color. If a Padres fan or a Phillies fan or Mariners fan, there'll be something for everybody. And there's some interesting little nods I give to their fan bases and stuff on some of them. So I had a lot of fun. I designed them all. I had a great time. Those will be available soon. So look out for those. And obviously, if you want to talk, the place to go, just go check down in the notes below and find all the places that I'm going to be here and into the future. And make sure you check out on August 25th, I'll be doing my last ESPN2 broadcast the StatCast when the Astros take on the Orioles. It'll probably be a great game. We also got Kevin Brown, the Orioles play-by-play guy, who is going to be uniquely biased, and I can't wait to give him crap for that. So I'll catch you next time on the Mayday Pod, and y'all take it easy, enjoy some baseball, drink your water, and be good, all right? Talk to you soon. Bye.